In the late 13th century, Anatolia, what we now call modern Turkey, was, a patchwork of small states. These were known as beyliks. They were remnants of the once mighty Seljuk Sultanate of Rum, which had been shattered by the Mongol invasions. Into this chaotic world stepped a leader named Osman. He was the chief of a tribe of Oghuz Turks settled in the small town of Sogut, on the frontier of the Byzantine Empire. Nobody at the time could have guessed that this minor chieftain and his followers would lay the groundwork for one of the most powerful and long-lasting empires in world history. Following the path laid out by Osman, his successors turned their gaze westward across the Dardanelles Strait into Europe. The Balkans were a fractured and divided region, ripe for conquest. In the mid-14th century, the Ottomans crossed into Europe, establishing a permanent foothold at Gallipoli. From this base they launched a series of stunningly successful campaigns. Sultan Murad I, Osman's grandson, led his armies deep into the Balkans. He defeated a coalition of Serbian forces, Bosnian forces at the legendary Battle of Kosovo in 1389. This victory cemented Ottoman control over much of the region. With the Balkans largely under their control, the Ottomans encircled the last great bastion of the Byzantine Empire, its magnificent capital, Constantinople. For centuries, the city's legendary walls had repelled every attacker. It was the heart of Orthodox Christianity. The final push came in 1451 with the accession of a new sultan, a young and brilliant ruler named Mehmed II. He spent 2 years meticulously planning his assault. He built a massive fortress on the Bosphorus Strait to cut off the city from any potential aid. He commissioned a Hungarian engineer named Orban to build enormous cannons, superguns of their day, capable of smashing the city's ancient stone walls. In the spring of 1453, Mehmed and his massive army, numbering over 80,000 men, stood before the walls of Constantinople. The final siege was about to begin. On the 29th of May, 1453, Mehmed ordered the final all-out assault. Mehmed rode into the city in triumph, proceeding directly to the Hagia Sophia, the great cathedral, which he ordered to be converted into a mosque. Mehmed, now known as the Conqueror, made Constantinople, which he renamed Istanbul, the new capital of his empire. If Mehmed the Conqueror established the Ottoman Empire as a world power, it was Sultan Suleiman I who brought it to its absolute zenith. His reign, from 1520 to 1566, is known as the Magnificent or the Golden Age. Within the empire, however, he was known as Kanuni, the lawgiver. Suleiman personally led his armies on 13 major campaigns. He massively expanded the empire's borders. In Europe, his armies captured the fortress of Belgrade, Rhodes, and at Mohacs in 1526, he annihilated the Hungarian army. In the Mediterranean, his navy under Hayreddin Barbarossa dominated the seas. He was a great patron of the arts, sparking creativity in architecture. The Ottoman Empire was, at its heart, a remarkably diverse and cosmopolitan state. For centuries it ruled over a vast territory that was home to an incredible variety of ethnic and religious groups. Turks, Arabs, Greeks, Serbs, Bulgarians, Romanians, Armenians, Kurds, Jews. Managing this complex mosaic of peoples was one of the greatest challenges and achievements of the Ottoman state. This system was known as the millet system, from the Arabic word for nation or religious community. The wealth and stability of the Ottoman Empire, especially during its peak under Suleiman the Magnificent, fueled a golden age of art and architecture. They blended traditions, Persian, Byzantine, and Arab, to forge a distinct Ottoman style. That style shows in the great mosques dominating Istanbul's skyline. These weren't just mosques. They were kuli, including schools, hospitals, public baths, and soup kitchens serving the community. Mimar Sinan, chief royal architect, in a career of half a century created over 300 major structures. Ottoman artisans perfected Iznik tiles, cobalt blue, turquoise, and tomato red, and calligraphers elevated script to the highest art. Miniature painting flourished, and libraries and observatories made the empire a major intellectual center for centuries. Astronomy, mathematics, and medicine were strong, with observatories and well-organized hospitals. Though Europe's scientific revolution would later overtake them, the Ottoman world was a major intellectual and artistic center. Its buildings and art still shape our imagination of the empire. Even at the height of its power under Suleiman, the seeds of the Ottoman Empire's long decline were already being sown. One of the most significant problems was a crisis of succession. In the early days, the sons of the Sultan would be sent to govern provinces where they'd gain experience in leadership and warfare. However, from the 17th century onwards, princes were confined instead in the cafes, living in luxurious imprisonment with no training. When one was called to the throne, he was often unprepared, incompetent, or mentally unstable from his long confinement. The Janissaries, once the Sultan's elite slave soldiers, became a powerful political force, marrying, entering business and making the core hereditary. They frequently interfered in politics, overthrowing sultans who threatened their power. Rampant corruption, sale of offices and tax extortion further ate away at the state. The Timar system broke down, weakening provincial armies and letting local nobles build private forces. This produced provincial revolts and a standoff between palace and regional powers. These internal problems made the empire increasingly vulnerable to its external enemies. By the 18th and 19th centuries, the Ottoman Empire's internal decay was matched by a series of devastating military defeats. The balance of power had decisively shifted in favor of the rapidly industrializing nations of Europe. The Ottoman army, once feared, was now consistently outmatched by modern European forces. The Treaty of Karlowitz in 1699 is often seen as the beginning of long territorial decline. A series of wars and nationalist uprisings saw the empire lose huge swaths of territory, particularly in the Balkans. The empire also fell behind economically while Europe industrialized. European merchants, protected by capitulations, came to dominate Ottoman trade and enjoy tax exemptions. Cheap, mass-produced European goods flooded Ottoman markets, destroying local industries. European diplomats began to call the empire the sick man of Europe. The great powers circled, creating the diplomatic Eastern question. In response, reformist sultans launched the Tanzimat to modernize the army, centralize administration and guarantee rights. The final act of the Ottoman Empire's long history began in the early 20th century. In 1908, a group of reformist army officers known as the Young Turks seized power. The empire continued to lose territory in the Balkan Wars of 1912-13. When World War I broke out in 1914, the Ottoman government made a fateful decision. They entered the war on the side of the Central Powers, Germany and Austria-Hungary. The empire found itself fighting on multiple fronts against the Allied powers. They famously defended Gallipoli in 1915 against a major Allied invasion. Ottoman forces fought in Mesopotamia and Palestine, and against Russia in the Caucasus. The war placed an unbearable strain on the empire's fragile economy and society. During the war, the Young Turk government ordered the systematic deportation of the Armenian population, believing them disloyal. Hundreds of thousands of Armenian men, women, and children died from starvation, disease, and massacres. By 1918, the empire was exhausted and defeated. Allied troops occupied Istanbul and carved up its lands.